Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Minute Trends with Mark and Mike. Mike is being called away for his elected duties, that sort of thing. He might be able to join us a little later on. But who we have for you today is Jay Riffenbury. Now, let me just prep this guy. Not only was he Speaker of the Year for Vistage, I've been hearing his name for probably about a decade. It's almost like I think, Jay, you and I are kind of chasing each other across the United States. So I was in Madison, Wisconsin yesterday. I don't know where the hell you were, but it's the life as a speaker of Vistage. But I've been hearing people tell me your name. I just don't know why. So I'm curious, like if you're in the ranks of the few speakers out there that are speak regularly for Vistage and are told to me on a regular basis in my presentations, you got to be somebody that I need to know.
Well,
So
thank you for that. I'm humbled.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. So, our audience is really two-part. One is entrepreneurs. So the first half of this presentation, we'll be talking to them, kind of like what's the wisdom that we've accumulated from the CEOs that we deal with on a regular basis that we can impart on them. And then the second half will be aired on a different platform. That's the Middle Market Forum. So that's really for the Vistage members to come follow us and actually sit back and say, okay, this is what I need to talk about. This is what I'm seeing out there. How do you help middle market companies, continue to kick so much ass their feet hurt? So with that, why don't you tell us your background? Tell us how you got here, and then what is it that you teach so well in the Vistage ecosystem?
I'll try to be brief, just for the respect of everyone's time. So my background stems from West Point, is where I went to school. So I received a degree in nuclear physics there, and then went the Armor. I was a tanker officer, airborne ranger, and then from there, just enjoyed very much leading soldiers, and then from there went in the corporate realm. And so I graduated West Point in 1980, just to give you a little bit of time frame in regard to my tenure on this planet. Then I joined the corporate ranks a little bit. Then I went on my own in 1989, and I moved back to the Northeast. I grew up in Kingston, New York. I now live in Saratoga Springs, New York. We've been here now for 25 plus years, and moved up here in 93. And I started speaking around 90, 91. There was just something pulling at my heart. Even though I had the career and that type of thing, there was just something I felt I had to offer to those around me. And that background really stems from really not knowing what I wanted to be perfectly honest. The theme of my presentations, every one of them, is you teach best in life what you want to learn the most. That's the first takeaway for everyone out there. You teach best in life what you want to learn the most. So if you love something, you'll find your greatest joy to share what you love, whether it be art, literature, music, the outdoors, skiing, whatever it is. You have a passion for something that you want to learn, and when you get to that point where you feel comfortable in sharing it, that's what happened. And so there's where the root of that is. Dad died. My father passed when I was 11. Didn't have really a mentor role model growing up. Very small family. Mom was a wonderful support network and role model in her own way. But that was part of the equation there. What triggered me is what brings a level of happiness to people, success, comfort. And it really has evolved now into a leadership role of really reinforcing for people the whole blueprint, what I call the blueprint for character development. What do you stand for and believe in as a human being? What are the values that drive your decisions? What are the values that structure your character? What's your backstop when the curveball's thrown, so to speak? Those tragedies in life, those challenges, the difficulties, the relationship challenges, the demons that we all have. How do you handle that? And I can share with you, I've just learned over the years, and this is what I reinforce for the CEOs. I give them that blueprint. But the character is the foundation for persevering and having that resiliency to carry on. And so it's been word of mouth for over 5 years now in regard to speaking. And it's been a real blessing. And I'm very humbled. And, I'm always learning each and every time I'm sharing a message. It always evolves, always changes, always grows, because look what's going on in society, right? I mean, we're inundated every day with change and different things that really test our sense of self. And when you have a large number of people who are basing their self-worth and value on how many likes they got on Facebook or how much time they spend on TikTok, we're going down a socially slippery slope. So I get passionate, as you can see, so I'll stop now.
Well, okay. So let break some of that down. So first of all, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, sure.
And it's frankly, I mean, you might know a certain amount of assholes that went to West Point, but I have yet to find one. So and by the way, on the campus at West Point, there are, believe it or not, Perot guns. So I've only been there a few times. Beautiful campus.
Oh yeah.
But first thing I noticed was this giant Civil War era gun that are called, well, some people pronounce it parrot, but it's evidently a relative of mine that designed that.
Wow.
Back when. Yeah. That's my little exposure to West Point. So, but I can totally understand why people are get with this. I think that line that you're saying is that what you want to teach is what you want to learn. In psychology, they call that me search instead of research.
Love it.
So, and I think that's a syndrome of the psychological disciplines within the university system too.
Sure, on some level. And the other thing that has evolved in regard to just the presentation, what makes it somewhat unique, and I feel extremely this is a priority, is that it crosses over from just, because I really get into culture in the workplace, but that's the interesting thing. It goes beyond just the workplace. So we're talking about culture with ourselves, culture with our family, values within the family. I love asking my CEO groups, when was the last time you sat around the dinner table and asked your own children, what do you think the core values of our family might be? We spend all this time and energy and effort on values in a company and culture and mission and vision, but we don't take a moment to ask our teenagers what's held us together as a family through these years. So, this is where, and then the other thing, I get into their own individual sense of character. When was the last time and you sat down and asked yourself, what are 3 or 4 values that I believe define my character? That when the curveball's thrown my way, what's my backstop? Is it my resiliency, my compassion, my passion? Is it my intellect, my creativity, my curiosity? What are the things that I hold on to when I'm walking that tightrope of balance in my life?
What comes to mind when you bring that type of stuff up is a team is always a reflection of its leader.
Sure.
It's like, and we had Ozzy Gontang on the show a little while back. Are you familiar with him at all?
Not really. No.
All right. So he's a really mild-mannered former monk that actually became a chair for 30 years. And he was like the most famous chair in the country 17 years ago when I first started chairing.
Wow.
So his quotes kept being thrown at me, and I was like, damn, I need to shut up around the people that repeat him, So like, I need to absorb this stuff. And one of the things he famously said was that people join Vistage in order to grow their business. What they get out of it is personal growth, and then their business grows.
Right.
And there's a couple of pushbacks I'd have on that. I don't know if it's going to be germane to our conversation, but the idea is that so if we're kind of in effect peeling an onion as a member. Because I'm one of the few people that's actually been a chair, a member, and a speaker. Right. The only thing I haven't been is corporate right now. I believe there's only 2 of us in the entire system that have been all 3 positions at the moment. Right. That the ones who are active in the system right now. So the idea though is what I'm hearing from you is you ask annoying questions. They're almost like I guess maybe like a proctology exam type question for you spiritually. You get what I mean? It's like you ask irritating questions that they don't necessarily have an answer to, but it causes them to think.
Well, all right. So let me just give you a little sample here. So my 4 cornerstones to the blueprint for character development are core values, accountability, personal honesty, and integrity.
Yeah.
The personal honesty piece is life-changing for people because it puts people in a position where you have to ask yourself, am I living what I'm projecting? And projecting what I'm living. Because if I'm projecting that I'm an honorable man, yet behind the scenes I'm living a dishonorable life, there's no way I can be happy because I'm living an internal lie. And that's why there's no direct correlation. I may get pushed back on this, but exact direct correlation between money, things, wealth, fame, power, and happiness. Because if there were an exact direct correlation between all the stuff we aspire to have in happiness, we could take a little field trip to the wealthiest places of any community in the country. And then when all the people have the most stuff, be the best example of happiness and fulfillment. Well, why are the people out there, who have all kinds of stuff and are miserable? And there's people out there who don't have all that much and seem to be pretty content. And we all like nice things, so do I. But I've learned in my, again, 69 years this year almost, at the end of the day, what I own doesn't define my character. I've never been to a funeral, where the person doing the eulogy is talking about what the person owned. Always the content is about their character, what they gave more than what they took. And the fact that they believed enough in other people to share a part of their heart, mind, and soul to make them a better person. Why do you think we remember our role models, our teachers, our coaches? It had nothing to do with stuff. It had to do with the fact that they believed that we could be more than who we are today. And what a wonderful gift that is, Mark. Think about this for a moment, that all of us, everyone listening right now, that all of us have the ability, just based on our attitude, our behavior, our values, that we have the ability to instill in others they can be more than who they are today. What a wonderful blessing that is, a gift, and what a wonderful reason to wake up.
Yeah, it's like, when people really struggle with what's the purpose, what's the meaning of life, that type of thing. What's the purpose in life? To me, the purpose in life is to have a purpose. And like, some of this might sound kind of rote and maybe even a little trite, but that's the case. So very few people are able to articulate that. The way I do it, like that, is, from my perspective, is like this. I'll turn to the CEO and go, tell me how often your eyes roll in your head. And then they'll say, do you know what question you're actually asking yourself when your eyes are rolling in your head? It's, what the fuck am I doing this for? So I want you to have such a strong answer to that. I want it to be so pithy and short that you could tattoo it to the inside of your eyelids. So this way, when your eyes roll in your head, you go, oh yeah, that's the reason why I'm doing this. Yeah. You spend less time in victim mode, more time in action mode, because you have your purpose and it's front of mind.
Right.
So it becomes like the rudder for us about what decisions we make. Mine is help the few, protect the many. So if you're ever standing over my grave, know that I want that my headstone to read that. But that's kind of like I think in some ways this best stuff to chase is the stuff you really can't own. It's like to me, I'm at the stage in my life that where I recognize I don't own anything. Stuff owns me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like, as a dad, like and certainly a successful man, it's like you're basically someone else's ATM machine. And you have to come into grips with that. Like, that's a necessary thing to do. But the deal is, because you got a lot of people counting on you to make excellent decisions, but you can't have too much stuff because the stuff just owns us.
Yeah. And that's why one of my favorite lines over the years is, the simpler your life is, the happier you tend to be, because the less you have to be responsible for. Right.
That's a good point. I guess with myself, like, I don't know that my personality is quite that. I had open heart surgery about 2.5 years ago. And I came out of that saying, I need to get stuff done today. Like, I work like a maniac. Like, I'm simultaneously, I'm writing 6 books right now. So like, they come out once a year or so, but the deal, it doesn't mean I'm not writing them in my head, what have you. So I'm a quintessential worker that way, to the point where I don't know if I'm ever going to retire. Like, it's more like I kind of want to leave the world a better place, partially because my mortality was shown me with that surgery. It was like being run over by a freight train. So I feel a moral obligation to get as much out of me as possible for, to leave this world as a better place as best I possibly can.
Well, in regard to books, my first one was entitled No Excuse. That was kind of the foundation book. And then the other two are...
That sounds like a military dude.
Yeah, well, actually, I titled the book, and it wasn't until a friend goes, Jay, that was one of your 4 answers at West Point. Yes, sir, no, sir, no excuse, sir. And sir, I do not understand. We didn't use the 4th one, which I don't understand. But, the whole no excuse, I was just baffled by how many people would come into my little business, and it was all, whining, blaming, complaining, excuses, and on and on and on. I'm like, the whole relinquishment of any personal accountability. And you can still see that today out there, to a pretty high level of taking how important it is to take ownership for our lives and who we are, what we say, what we do. And I'm far from perfect, and I'm certainly a sinner, but I've tried to, along the way, recognize that with all the internal demons we have, there are avenues in which we can conquer that. And first step is taking ownership for what we've done, where we are, where we want to go, the decisions we make, that type of thing. So again, you teach best in life what you want to learn the most. So,
well, I think you're spot on with that whole thing, because myself, I've been on a mission to figure out why people do the things they do my entire life. Like, so I'm the youngest of 7, and what I used to do was I used to sit around with like a mental notepad and look at my brothers and sisters and go, "That's really stupid. Don't do that." And I'm like, "That's repeatable. Do that." And then the deal is like, but what I wanted to know is, why were they doing the stupid things they were doing? Why did I do the stupid things I do? So, in fact, we've got coming on the podcast in about a month is David Perkins. He did a massive study of IQ at Harvard. And so I'm reading one of his older books right now called Outsmarting IQ. And the idea is that he figured out that you don't become better seekers of truth the higher the IQ, nor the more advanced academic degrees you get. You become better at articulating really stupid ideas. So it takes truly brilliant people to believe really stupid ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not like 2 + 2 = 5.
Right.
I think it comes back to this. There was a chair in Spartanburg, South Carolina that you might have spoken for. His first name was Steve. He was actually a rear admiral and had retired.
Okay.
And so I turned to the guy, well, you really rear admiral? He goes, smoke him if you got him, that type of thing.
Right.
But what he said to me was, he said, I believe no matter what happens, you were asking yourself a question prior to whatever happened. And the results are from how good or bad a question you asked yourself prior to doing whatever it was that caused this thing to materialize. So it's almost like, do we ask ourselves excellent questions or do we ask ourselves easy out questions? That comes back to an ethos of personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So once I realized that every issue processing I would do as a member, all the things that bothered me in my life, when I realized I created all of it. So I'm the idiot that created this. Therefore, I'm the idiot that can fix this. You get what I mean? So it's like, I think that's missing. But the reason why I think it's missing in human beings is, partially what I teach is evolutionary theory. It's like, how do you predict human behavior? Well, first thing you got to understand is human nature. And as soon as you understand human nature, you can predict human behavior and then therefore forecast the economy. So once you biologicize something, you're significantly increasing the accuracy of your forecasting as a result. But you have to understand the seedier side of human beings and why is it there. So if we spot something, now this is just my theory, I think evolutionists would actually agree with me on this. But if you spot something in human behavior, human nature, and if it's persistent and pernicious, like there's something wrong with it, like victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does anybody in the United States play the victim anymore is mind-boggling to me. It means they've never been anywhere else. They're statistically illiterate and probably historically illiterate too. That's when people in your orbit that complain about the United States or say it's some type of hellscape. It's like, because you've never been anywhere else. Like, are we comparing some concept of perfection in your mind? Or are we comparing it to actual reality?
Yeah, let me piggyback on that real quick.
Sure.
This has happened 2 days ago. I was coming back from Minneapolis, doing a keynote on Wednesday afternoon. And on the one leg of the flight, I'm sitting next to what I found out was a young lady from Poland. And she exactly started sharing about how do people in America play victim mentality. I grew up in a communist country. I had to wait an hour, she was telling me, just to get an ice cream cone. And if I wanted a second scoop, she'd have to get back in the back of the line again. And she goes, we were dirt poor, poverty. They made their way to West Berlin, and then eventually got their visa or whatever and got to America when she was 7. But she remembers all this, as a young child. And she's like just adamant about the fact that it's amazing that people in this country whine about what they don't have when they realize how many people don't have anything compared to what we have.
Well, there's some really cool psychological studies done on that, believe it or not, Instagram and sexy selfies and stuff like that people post on those type of things, they go up in certain areas of the United States where there's greater income inequality. So what you have is when you have a situation where it's a poor neighborhood, they don't care about stuff like this because they're not necessarily comparing themselves to the Joneses next door.
Mm-hmm.
They're poor too. So what happens is when you're in a nice area, like let's say Beverly Hills or Southampton or what have you, and you see, a $25 million home right next to a homeless person over here, and you're sitting back saying, I can see the extremes. Believe it or not, women will post sexier selfies in that environment than they will in the poor environment or the rich environment. But it's because they see that there's a whole aspect of this that basically the theory comes down to this. An anthropologist figured out that we actually evolved language so we could lie about ourselves. So we're constantly trying to reposition ourselves within our in-group. And those come in white lies, they come in blue lies, they come in a series of lies. We lie so often, we don't even know we're lying. So how, like, I like your whole idea about how can we be more truthful to ourselves.
Yeah, let me. So
why don't you bring that back out?
Here's a couple of things you described there when you talk about the lying part. Two things: people who lie and don't even know they're lying, they're sociopaths. Number two, you have a trend in this country called narcissism, where people are so focused on themselves, they actually have no conscience anymore to think of others. And
which is on the increase too,
oh, totally. And that's, you just, again, that comes from the entitlement mentality, thinking I'm old, I'm a victim, whatever it calls. But back to when you were saying I'm the youngest of seven, I was watching my siblings make decisions. I was wondering why they made some of the decisions they made. So in the personal honesty piece of the presentation, I talk about the root of why we make the decisions that we make. And it all stems from needs and fears, right? So if you experience, for example, if I have a conscious experience where I feel less than other people around me, okay? Something happens to me and I feel less than my peers, my friends, maybe even depending on the socioeconomic environment I grow up in, maybe I can feel less than other people in society. Well, as a result of that conscious experience, I immediately, subconsciously now may develop a need to be appreciated because apparently I'm less than others. So that need for appreciation is going to be a driving force in why I make the decisions that I make, because I'm going to start making decisions in order to get appreciation. So where the violation comes in is, what if that decision to acquire appreciation, what if it violates the very values I believe in? Then I start becoming disconnected with myself because I'm allowing the need to basically drive my decisions. Now let's go to the fear. I share with you, I lost dad when I was young. Okay. So that was a conscious experience. I didn't enjoy that at all. The hurt, the pain, the sense of abandonment. So that conscious decision, that conscious experience of losing my father at an early age, subconsciously now, I may develop a fear of intimacy, right? Because why would I ever want to get close to another human being again when I might go through that same experience? So that now subconscious fear of intimacy is going to impact my decision-making process in regard to relationships, right? I love you, but don't cross this line, because if you hurt me or I may lose you, I'm not going to become compassionate, empathetic, or sympathetic. I actually may become defensive and angry because you're crossing a line where I made up my mind a long time ago, subconsciously, I'm never going down that path again. So those needs and fears, they create a world for us. And if that world that we're striving to satisfy the need or moving away from the fear, if that interferes with us staying aligned with our core values, our personal values in life, then we're disconnected. And that's where we get ourselves into a whole lot of trouble, where we think we're doing just fine because we're satisfying the need or we're protecting ourselves from the fear, but in the same time, we're violating the very values that I believe in. So if the need for appreciation puts me on a path where I'm dishonorable, and one of my values is to be an honorable man, that's where the disconnect. And this is life-changing for people because they realize, wow, I never understood what pushed and pulled me. I never understood really what was the foundation for why I made the decisions that I make. And this establishes a groundswell or a framework why we've made some of those decisions.
Yeah. So picture, let me get back to the pernicious thing about victim mentality. When there's a rule in evolutionary theory that whatever enabled us to survive long enough to procreate continues in the next generation. So that's why I have blue eyes and light skin and what have you. It's like, my wife got me 23andMe, and I turned to her and I said, "This is for Christmas." I said, "How much does this cost you?" She said, $85. Jay, I'm the type of asshole that I would take your $85 and send you back the same picture of the same single-celled organism to every human being with a little note saying, "Thanks for the $85." I said, "How far back?" She's like, "Don't you want to know your ancestry?" I'm like, "You can look at my face and know my ancestry."
Exactly.
So part of it is that there's a rule in that, though. If you find something in human behavior that is pernicious and persistent, like victim mentality, there was some type of evolutionary benefit to it. That's the reason why it continues, because it enabled us to survive long enough to procreate. So what happens is, I think it's like the last level of maturity, and it can happen at any time in life. But what happens is, as a child, you have to play the victim because you have to get to the age where you can procreate. Then I think women break down separately into what's important to them and what have you, because we're not structured the same way, men and women. But the idea, though, is that The very thing that enabled me to survive long enough to procreate now stands in the way of my leadership. It stands in the way of my growth because I'm playing the victim of something. Let's say it's this. So this is my issue in life. So I'm playing victim to it. Now I'm just given all the power to it to fix it. And now I can't fix it because I'm massaging it. I'm looking at it like it's a problem when it's really a challenge. And like, I don't think that's semantics. I think that's actually a subtle difference between being able to gauge whether a direct report walks in my office is using the word problem. I know they're not in the right mental headspace to solve it. They're massaging it. And frankly, there are people in your orbit and my orbit that are so problem oriented. They actually value themselves socially based on how many and the quality of their problems. They're problem oriented. And then when we solve their problem, they find another one. They find another one. They're in a constant state of victim mentality. There's a great exercise on it called the Cartman Drama Triangle. In fact, I've been trying to get him on the podcast. This is Stephen B. Cartman.
Okay.
He figured out what you and I are talking about in 1963, right? And then changed interpersonal relationships by recognizing where am I playing the victim right now? And how am I socially benefiting from playing the victim? So, and then it's like, okay, well, then what do? I bring other people into my world that think victim mentality really does exist. It's reality. They step in to rescue me. And then what do? I turn them into the villain.
Well, now now they join a victim group, so to speak, and now they fit to belong, right? Now people are yearning to belong. So again, people attract the same type of energy together. So if I'm playing role of victim, I'm going to want other victims in my life so that we can all, schmooze together in regard to everybody, our problems. I mean, you can see it politically, you can see it socially. It's just out there all the time. And an interesting thing, if we take it, if I move this to a little bit of a leadership type of topic, I found the most fascinating thing in regard to leadership is the role of vulnerability. I call it my triple crown of leadership. And that is vulnerability plus humility plus transparency equals authenticity. Mark, I've never seen in my 30 years such a yearning for authentic leadership in all my life. I've never seen young people yearning for structure, for discipline. They want people in their lives who have the guts to stand up for what they believe in. They don't want to be around wimpy people. But the idea of being vulnerable in regard to bringing and improving relationships is when, as a leader, I'm not saying we use our vulnerabilities as excuses for our weaknesses. I'm not saying we just gush out everything we're about to complete strangers, but if we really want to unify the people that we lead and manage, and even our family, when we let our walls down a little bit, when we showed other people that we're human, not victim, but human, and then we have many of the same issues that everybody else has, because no one's from a perfectly functional family. Everybody's dysfunctional, and that's what you got to take ownership for too. We're all dysfunctional. But the understanding in regard to bringing people to allow them to understand that you're right there with them, I found to be extremely important, extremely effective. And when we let our walls down a little bit, then those that we lead are more willing to do the same. So that enhances and breeds a greater level of communication because they feel safe to open up, and then in turn, a greater level of trust. So I think all these things interact in regard to how we can maybe help people get out of that whole victim mindset a little bit if they understand the importance of taking ownership, because you can never have a life when you're constantly playing victim, because you're basing it on everything around you rather than internally what you are.
Yeah. There's so much to this. I think this is the perfect time for just to prompt us moving over to the middle market forum. So please join us over there, because now we're getting into the whole thing about private middle markets and how this affects Vistage members. Mark Parad here. If you like these videos, be